Welcome to the podcast of the College of Music and Dramatic Arts at Louisiana State University.
We're here today with Dr. Pamela Pike. She's a professor of piano pedagogy here at Louisiana State University, a rather new faculty member, and she's brought a lot of innovation here and a lot of spirit for the experimental. Good afternoon, Pam.
Good afternoon.
Well, you know, you've been involved in some very exciting things here. Just in my year and a half, I've seen you work with a disc clavier and distance learning with UCLA. You've given some presentations for working with senior citizens at a conference in Portland. You just gave a conference in Minneapolis. Do you want to talk about any of that?
Sure. Yes, I presented at two of the most recent CMS conferences. Both of those were dealing with community engagement, which I think is a really important thing for us in the university. It's very easy for us to sort of stay holed up, within the walls of the academy, and yet we should be all about making music and sharing that music with others. And so I think we can be a great resource for the community, but they can also be a great resource for us. We can certainly learn from them. And in any of the community engagement projects that I've been involved with, where I've been the so-called teacher, I think I've always learned as much as the students have. It's perhaps different from what they're learning, but I just think it's such an important area. So I was speaking about that there. And I've also presented at two recent MTNA national conferences talking about sight reading, particularly as it pertains to the piano and some of the research I've been doing with that, so that we can help our young adults learn to read music better. So, yeah.
Well, speaking of age and speaking of young, I'm going to go the opposite
Okay.
way. I don't see a lot of people, again, you use the word engaged, but engaged in senior citizens or older people who may never have had a chance to study and so on. What spurred that interest? Because I have to add for our listeners and viewers here, the session I saw you do in Portland was a very challenging one. I thought you did a wonderful job, but you were working with people in their 70s and 80s who couldn't read music, who'd never had a lesson, and you had some electronic keyboards there. And again, I thought that was very, very brave, but also very, it was very, very insightful. And I think you were really triggering some feelings in those people that they may not have had before. What led you to that?
I have been fortunate enough to have taught older adults for most of my teaching career, actually, in the private studio. And it's actually the topic of my dissertation research back a decade ago. And from that research, I observed a lot of people who were older, retirees, taking lessons both privately and in groups. And I realized that the social connection was really important. I think it's more important as we age, especially. There are so many changes when we leave the workforce, and we have to then find meaningful leisure activities. And so I sort of made it my work for the past 10 years to figure out how we can create piano classes. For me, it's been piano classes where we're making music. Some students may have some experience, some may not. There is wonderful ensemble music out there that we can use as the vehicle for making that music. I've arranged some of my own as well because, we can always use more music. And then it's just the experience of sort of fostering this community where these adults are comfortable working with one another and learning from one another and sharing music and laughter and just sort of a love of life, really.
So how did you start? I mean, this all sounds great. It all sounds wonderful. But I found that starting something like this, especially, did you have any models to follow?
I didn't. I just had, well, I shouldn't say that. At Eastman, of course, Roy Ernst started the, my mind is going blank, the band program. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's very successful. There are band programs all over the country, many of them sponsored through institutions, but some of them at churches and some of them at community centers. So I knew of that. But for me, I had the model of bringing senior citizens onto campus. For me, that was really important. I wanted them to be first of all, around young people, even if those young people weren't in the class. But to see some of the technology that we use now, most of the people I've worked with haven't had electronic keyboards. They have the regular acoustic piano. So I started small. I just worked with my department chair and the dean, and they allowed me to start a class.
Where was this?
It was at the University of Arkansas, Little Rock.
Okay.
And the program is still thriving. I think that lets us know a program is successful if the person who founded it can leave and the program has still continued to grow and flourish. So we had a one afternoon a week class for an hour. And I think that first semester there were 6 students. And what I learned was if those people are really getting something out of the class, word will spread. And sure enough, they went to their exercise classes and their walking groups and their churches, and they told people about it. And within the end of the next semester, we had 25 students, which was about as much as we could handle at the time. So that's how it started, and that particular program has 3 different sections, if you will. There's a novice group. The students are encouraged to help each other and work together. They certainly practice independently, but all of the music is ensemble, so they have to depend on one another, just as we do in band and choir.
Well, now here's the golden question. I've been waiting to ask you this. When I saw you, and you just referred to it matter-of-factly like an ensemble of piano players. Well, I think we know that couldn't take place without electronic keyboards,
Right.
at least off-site.
Right.
Did you find technology, or did technology find you?
Oh, that's a great question. I think technology found me. When I was in grad school, I saw the power of what we do in group piano, for example.
And where was that, graduate school?
My doctorate degree is from the University of Oklahoma, and they certainly had a wonderful setup.
They were pioneers in it.
They really were, yes. And so I happened to be there as all of this was happening. I left just before they started doing some of those distance demos with internet too, but so I was around, and I wasn't perhaps conscious of everything, but it seeps into your skin somehow. And when I left, from there I went up north to Vermont, and I taught at a community music school for about a year, where there was limited technology. And I think that's when I realized the power that it had. So when I ended up in Arkansas, part of what we did there was we also wrote a small grant to get some portable keyboards so we could then take that music out on the road and share it with others, so that people didn't have to come to campus necessarily.
Well, Vermont, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, you seem to be thriving in environments in states that have limited number of high population centers.
But wonderful people, and I think wonderful cultural heritage, and I think that makes a difference.
So the Yamaha disc clavier, had you worked with that before?
I had. At OU, we had one in the piano lab. It was an older model, and so I'd worked with it a little in some children's classes, but I hadn't really worked much with it. I saw a demo several years back with this distance learning as they were starting to pioneer this distance teaching, and it still wasn't quite where I had hoped it would be. It still wasn't quite as immediate as I would have liked, but I was determined to keep an eye on it, so that when the technology sort of caught up with our educational standards, perhaps then we could jump on it. So, and I feel like that's what we're doing now.
Great. And you feel here at LSU with your colleagues, your students, with any support we're able to give in technology, you have the ability to move forward in your area with your research, your teaching, and your innovations?
I do. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to come to LSU, was to be able to do some of the research I needed to do. And there are resources for that here. We have great technology in my area. I'm very fortunate. We have a fabulous piano lab where we will have a disc clavier of our very own, and we've been fortunate to have loaner disc claviers, in the time that I've been here. So, plus we have wonderful people. I just love my colleagues, and I think our students are so open to exploring not just new technologies, but different kinds of teaching, and it's wonderful.
Great. Well, we've been speaking with Pamela Pike this afternoon, a member of the piano faculty at the School of Music at Louisiana State University. Thank you very much, Pam, for
Thank
speaking with us
you.
today.
Thank you.
My name's Laurence Kaptain. I'm Dean of the College of Music and Dramatic Arts at Louisiana State University. Thank you for tuning in to our podcast today.